The last thing Ethan Blake expected that night was for his luxury car to skid off the icy road, leaving him stranded in the middle of a relentless snowstorm. One moment the road was clear, the next it was a blinding sheet of white, turning the highway into a death trap. His GPS had failed, his phone had no signal, and his car refused to start. Cursing under his breath, he pulled his coat tighter around himself. He was supposed to be in a 5-star hotel, preparing for a multi-million-dollar meeting, not stuck in the middle of nowhere, knee-deep in snow. Then, through the blur of falling snow, he spotted a dimly lit sign, Carter's Bakery. The warm glow from its windows cut through the darkness, promising heat and shelter. He had no choice. Bracing against the wind, he trudged through the thick snow and pushed open the door. A small bell jingled above his head, and the scent hit him instantly. Freshly baked bread, cinnamon, and coffee. Warmth enveloped him, chasing away the biting cold. He exhaled sharply. At least, he wouldn't freeze to death tonight. But what he didn't know was that stepping into that bakery would change everything. The door shut behind Ethan, blocking out the biting wind. He stood still for a moment, letting the warmth seep into his frozen limbs as his eyes took in the small bakery. Carter's Bakery wasn't fancy, just a cozy little shop with wooden tables, a glass display filled with pastries, and a chalkboard menu hanging on the wall. But it had something his world of luxury didn't: warmth. "Take a seat wherever you'd like," a female voice called from behind the counter. Ethan turned. Behind the counter stood a young woman with wavy brown hair tied up in a loose ponytail, her cheeks flushed pink from the heat of the ovens. She wasn't dressed in designer clothes, nor was she heavily made up. But there was something about her, the way her eyes sparkled with curiosity, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence, that made her impossible to ignore. "I'm not looking for a seat," Ethan said flatly. "Do you know if there's a mechanic nearby?" The woman raised an eyebrow, lips twitching as if suppressing a laugh. "You're not from around here, are you? Closest mechanic is about 20 miles away." She poured a cup of coffee and placed it on the counter. "But I do have coffee. Want some?" Ethan hesitated, then gave a curt nod. He slid onto a stool, brushing snow off his coat, letting the heat from the mug warm his frozen fingers. "Stowe, what brings you out in this mess?" she asked, leaning casually against the counter. "Business." He took a sip. The coffee was strong and unexpectedly good. She tilted her head, amusement flickering in her eyes. "Driving to a meeting in the middle of a snowstorm? Not your smartest decision." Ethan bristled. "I didn't exactly plan for a blizzard." She shrugged, entirely unfazed by his tone. "Well, you're lucky you ended up here. That storm isn't letting up anytime soon. You're better off waiting it out." Ethan exhaled, glancing out the window at the relentless snowfall. "Fantastic," he muttered. The woman smirked, resting her chin on her hand. "You're a real ray of sunshine, aren't you?" Ethan shot her a look, but instead of being intimidated, she just looked amused. "Do you talk to all your customers like this?" he asked dryly. "Only the grumpy ones," she shot back, her smile widening. "I'm Lily, by the way. And you?" He hesitated before responding. "Ethan." "Well, Ethan," Lily said, straightening up, "if you're stuck here, I've got hot soup on the stove and a spare room in the back. Not exactly a 5-star hotel, but it beats freezing in your car." Ethan blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected offer. "I don't need charity," he said stiffly. "It's not charity," she replied lightly. "It's common sense." And with that, she disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. He glanced outside, watching as the snow piled higher. He hated feeling powerless, yet here he was, at the mercy of both the storm and an infuriatingly kind stranger. Ethan sat motionless on the stool, staring at the cup of coffee in front of him. From the kitchen, he could hear the distant clatter of pots and pans, the occasional sound of an oven door opening, and the rich aroma of something freshly baked filling the air. He wasn't used to waiting. In his world, every second was scheduled, every moment accounted for. Here, he had nothing. No emails, no meetings, no control. And it unsettled him. In his world, every minute was accounted for. Meetings to attend, deals to negotiate. But here, Stuck in a roadside bakery with no way out, all he could do was wait. A few minutes later, Lily returned, setting down a steaming bowl of soup in front of him without a word. "Eat," she said simply. Ethan glanced at the soup, then back up at her. "I didn't order this." "You didn't have to." She crossed her arms, raising an eyebrow. "You need to eat unless you want to pass out on my floor." He hesitated before finally picking up the spoon. The moment he took a sip, his stomach tightened in response, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since morning. The soup was rich, warm, and perfectly seasoned. "Not bad," he muttered. Lily smirked. "That's the best compliment I'll get out of you, isn't it?" Ethan shook his head, focusing on his meal. For the first time that day, he felt something close to comfort. Outside, the snow continued to fall relentlessly. A few locals drifted in, stomping the snow off their boots, chatting with Lily like they had known her forever. Ethan watched as she moved around the bakery, refilling cups, laughing at familiar jokes, knowing exactly how each customer liked their coffee. She was different from the people in his world. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, wasn't calculating her next move, she was just herself. As night fell, the bakery emptied, and Lily pulled off her apron, stretching her arms. "The spare room is still open. Do you want to stay?" Ethan stared at her for a long moment, pride warring with practicality. Then, glancing at the window and the snow piling higher outside, he sighed in defeat. "Fine," he muttered, "but just for one night." Lily only smiled, handing him a neatly folded pile of blankets. "Make yourself at home." She led him to a small back room, simple, with a single bed and an old heater humming in the corner, but it was better than freezing in his car. Before she left, she paused at the doorway. "Get some rest, Ethan. Tomorrow's a new day." Ethan watched as she disappeared down the hall, then lay back on the bed. For the first time in a long time, he felt something unfamiliar: peace. The next morning, Ethan woke to the rich aroma of coffee and something sweet baking in the oven. It took him a moment to remember where he was. Not in his luxury apartment, but in a small roadside bakery where he had been stranded by the storm. Stretching, he pulled on his coat and stepped out into the main shop. The warmth from the ovens wrapped around him like a blanket, shielding him from the freezing air outside. Behind the counter, Lily was pouring coffee into a large mug. When she noticed him, she smirked. "Morning, Mr. Sunshine. I was starting to think you'd sleep all day." Ethan slid onto the same stool as yesterday, rubbing his face tiredly. "Is this how you greet all your guests?" "This place doesn't offer wake-up calls," she said, setting a plate of pastries and a steaming cup of coffee in front of him. "But it does come with breakfast." Ethan eyed the food, then looked up at her. "Another unsolicited meal?" Lily shrugged. "You're still stuck here. You'll need energy to survive another long day of doing absolutely nothing." To his surprise, Ethan chuckled. A rare, quiet laugh that even he hadn't expected. He picked up one of the pastries and took a bite. It was soft, warm, and filled with a hint of cinnamon. "Not bad." Lily smirked. "I'll take that as high praise." Outside, the storm still hadn't let up. Ethan glanced at the window, expecting to feel restless, irritated, but strangely, he didn't. Lily's voice pulled him back. "If you're bored, you could always help me out." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You want a businessman to work in a bakery?" "Well," she said, crossing her arms, "you don't have anything else to do. Who knows, maybe you'll discover a hidden talent." Ethan was about to refuse, but then he caught the challenge in her eyes, the slight smirk on her lips, and for some reason, one he didn't quite understand, he wanted to prove her wrong. "Fine," he said, standing. "But I'm not promising anything." Lily grinned. "Trust me, my expectations aren't that high." And just like that, Ethan Blake, who had spent his life in corporate offices and high-stakes negotiations, found himself rolling up his sleeves in a small roadside bakery. Whether this was the craziest or most interesting decision he'd ever made, he wasn't sure. Ethan couldn't remember the last time he had done real hands-on work. His hands were used to holding pens and signing contracts, not kneading dough or wiping down counters. Yet, somehow, Lily had roped him into the daily rhythm of the bakery. At first, it was a disaster. He spilled flour everywhere, cut bread into ridiculously uneven slices, and nearly knocked over a tray of freshly baked cookies. "You're really not meant for kitchen work, huh?" Lily teased, hands on her hips. "Shocking, isn't it?" Ethan muttered, brushing flour off his coat. "Absolutely," she smirked. "I've never seen anyone this hopeless." He opened his mouth to fire back a sarcastic reply, but then he realized he was smiling. Really smiling. Gradually, he started to get the hang of things. Lily showed him how to knead dough properly, how to check when the pastries were done, and even how to make coffee the way her regulars liked it. They talked as they worked, their conversations shifting from casual banter to something deeper. "Have you ever thought about leaving the city?" Lily asked one evening as they wiped down the counters. Ethan paused, glancing out the window. "Not really. Everything I've built is there. And are you happy with it?" He didn't answer right away. He had never stopped to think about it before. But here, in this tiny bakery, with a woman who had an easy smile and eyes full of warmth, he found himself wondering, maybe happiness wasn't always about the things he had been chasing. Ethan sat at the counter, absently turning his coffee cup in his hands, his eyes fixed on the window. The snow was still falling, but not as heavily as before. Beside him, Lily stood in quiet observation, her gaze following his. "Looks like the roads will be clear by morning," she said softly. Ethan's grip on his cup tightened slightly. This was what he had been waiting for. His way back to his life, his meetings, his million-dollar deals. So, why did it feel like something was missing? He hesitated before speaking, his own voice catching him off guard. "What if I don't want to leave?" Lily's head snapped toward him, her eyes widening. "What?" Ethan blinked, as if surprised by his own words. "I mean, if the roads are still bad, maybe I should stay another day, just to be safe." Lily folded her arms, studying him with suspicion. "Ethan, you're not exactly the type to stick around a place like this." He met her gaze, his voice more certain now. "I'm not in a hurry." For the first time, Lily didn't seem to know what to say. Lily blinked, studying Ethan as if trying to determine if he was serious. "You're sure?" she asked, slowly. Ethan nodded. "If I'm still here, I might as well make myself useful." Lily let out a short laugh. "Are you actually offering to work in my bakery?" "I am, but I'm not promising I'll be any better than I was yesterday." She shook her head, but something in her expression softened. "If you're staying, you're helping me unload the supply truck this afternoon." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You really know how to take advantage of free labor, don't you?" "Absolutely," Lily said, smirking. That afternoon, the supply truck arrived, and for the first time in his life, Ethan Blake, who was used to giving orders rather than taking them, found himself hauling crates in the freezing cold. His fingers ached, his breath fogged in the air. But instead of frustration, he felt something oddly satisfying. Lily worked beside him, her cheeks pink from the cold. When they stacked the last crate, she turned to him with an approving smile. "You're not half bad at this," she teased. Ethan chuckled. For the first time, he felt no regret about staying. In the days that followed, Ethan became part of the bakery's daily routine. He helped Lily with small tasks, brewing coffee, wiping down counters, even attempting to knead dough. He was still terrible at it, but for the first time, he didn't mind. One evening, after the bakery had closed, Ethan and Lily sat in the kitchen, sharing a bottle of wine she had pulled from a cabinet. "You seem to like it here more than I expected," Lily teased. Ethan was quiet for a moment before he looked at her seriously. "There's something I need to tell you." Lily raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "I'm not just some stranded traveler," he admitted. "I'm Ethan Blake, CEO of a major corporation. My life is very different from this." Lily studied him for a moment, then smiled. "I know." Ethan blinked. "You do?" She nodded. "Your car, the way you talk, the way you look at the world. I figured it out." "Then why didn't you say anything?" She shrugged. "Because I don't care who you are. I care about the person you've been while you're here." Something tightened in Ethan's chest. For the first time, someone saw him, not for his wealth or success, but for who he truly was. He set his glass down, meeting her gaze. "What if I said I wanted to stay?" Lily smiled. "Then I'd tell you to wash your hands before kneading the dough." Ethan laughed, pulling Lily closer. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the next deal, the next flight, the next deadline. He was here. And for once, that was enough. Ethan traced the rim of his glass, lost in thought. Success had always been a destination, a prize waiting at the end of a ruthless chase. But here, surrounded by the scent of cinnamon and the quiet hum of the bakery, he wondered, had he been running in the wrong direction all along? Lily tilted her head, watching him carefully. "People like you don't just stay," she said quietly. "You get restless. You leave." Ethan held her gaze. "Maybe I don't want to leave this time." She studied him for a long moment, searching for hesitation. But for the first time, she found none. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The town was still blanketed in white, untouched and waiting. Ethan glanced at his phone. Flights, meetings, deals, everything he had built waiting for him. But then he looked at Lily, flour dusting her hands, warmth in her eyes, and something in his chest settled. Maybe for the first time he wasn't waiting for something else. Maybe he had already arrived.